Hello Booktube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. This video is my rankings for the final of the nonfiction division of the Booktube Prize. If you don't know what the Booktube Prize is, I'm going to leave links in the description box below. It is basically a prize created by a booktuber for booktubers, and everyone is welcome to join. So if you want to be a judge for next year, pay attention to the Booktube Prize channel. I'm sure an announcement, a call for judges will be posted in a few days, and I highly recommend that you participate because I think it's so much fun. There are 3 divisions: fiction, non-fiction, and fiction in translation. And for each division, we start the year with 48 books. And in each round, the field is cut by half. That means that for the finals, we have 6 books. And these are the 6 books I had to read for the semi-finals. No, not the semi-finals, the finals. These are the 6 books I had to read for the finals. They are in alphabetical order. Chasing Me to My Grave, a memoir of, an artist memoir of the Jim Crow South by Winfred Rembert, as told to Aaron I. Kelly. Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radden Keefe. Facing the Mountain, a true story of Japanese-American heroes in World War II by Daniel James Brown. How the Word is Passed, a reckoning with the history of slavery across America by Clint Smith. A Little Devil in America, notes in praise of Black performance by Hanif, Abdurraqib. And Under a White Sky, The Nature of the Future by Elizabeth Kolbert. 2 of these books. These 2 books I read in the quarterfinals. However, I did leaf through them before voting just to make sure that I remembered them well. So how did I vote? I'm filming this video in October and I voted somewhere in the middle of September. That means I voted a couple of weeks ago, and I think I was grumpy that morning because I decided to vote strictly on personal, subjective grounds. I liked the book, I didn't like the book, I like the subject, I don't like the subject. And that was that. Normally, I try to go a bit outside of myself and use objective criterias, and this time I did not. I decided to vote selfishly. And I have to admit that if I had to vote again today, my ranking would be a bit different. It's one book that I would rank lower, and that would bring a couple of books up. But I don't think it's going to make a difference in the final results. How did I vote? At number 6, I put Chasing Me to My Grave by Winfred Rembert. Did I put this just at the bottom just because it's a memoir and I don't like memoirs? Yep. I'm exaggerating. It's not just because it's a memoir. It's also because it's a piece of oral history that was put in writing. So basically the way the book was made is that Winfred Rembert told memories of his childhood, of his growing up, of his life to Aaron I. Kelly, and she put them in writing. And that means that the result, I think, works better in an audiobook. And I did not listen to an audiobook, I read the book. And sometimes it didn't completely work. The book itself is beautiful. It's full of the paintings of Winfred Rembert. I'm going to show you a few. So these paintings are made on leather, and that is a technique that the artist learned when he was in prison. So I think these paintings of the Chain Gang are the best paintings of them all. There was one in particular that I hated. I thought it was just one of the most terrible paintings I've ever seen. There's a place in the book where the artist, the first time he was told that his paintings could be valuable, he was told that by a white person, and he doubted at first. He was wondering, am I just being patronized because so many white people lied to me in my life? And I was thinking, if the painting that attracted the collector's attention was this one, then yes, he was being lied to because that painting is just terrible. So this painting is supposed to be a child, 2 children, playing with a toy. They are dragging something behind them. So first there's the perspective that's very weird. The proportions, you see the arm as long as the entire body, doesn't make sense. And worse, if you look closely, that hand, that is a pinky finger because you can see all the 3, I don't know how to call them, phalange, the 3 parts of the fingers. That means this is the thumb. It makes no sense. If you're dragging something, your palm is facing forward, the thumb is pointing out, not towards you, out. And also look at this elbow. So the elbow is bent here, so that means that the arm is supposed to continue straight across the body. No, it's there, so that means there's another bend somewhere in here. It makes no sense. So that painting was terrible. There were quite a few like that look like childish paintings. It's not just that it's naive art, it's art that is not well made. And yeah, so I guess I knocked the book down by perhaps one spot because of the bad paintings. There were some good ones, but there were some bad ones too. So that was my number 6. At number 5, I put A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib. Now with this, I have to admit, it's a very selfish vote. I could see that it was very well written. Some essays were extremely interesting. That's what it is, by the way. It's a collection of essays on various aspects of the performance of Black people. So there were essays about Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Josephine Baker, Aretha Franklin, about funerals for Black people, about dancing, what does dancing mean to Black people, and things like that. So it was, in theory, super interesting. For some reason, I could not be interested in that book. I don't know what happened. I think it was me. I think I was not in the right mood. But as I said, I decided to vote very selfishly. So that means that because I could not connect with the book, I put it at number 5. I can see that it's well made. It's just I did not connect with it. I really don't know why. I'm going to give the author another chance, certainly. If he writes something else, I'm going to read it because it was very well written. He has a nice style, but I just did not connect with this book. So that's why I put it at number 5. At number 4, this may surprise a few people, but I put How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. So in this book, the author goes to various places in the United States that are linked to slavery and the Civil War. He also goes to Senegal, to a place that was the leaving port, I guess, of many Black people who were transported to the Americas to be slaves. So he visits plantations, a Confederate cemetery, Angola prison, which is a former plantation, and various places like that, to see how slavery is presented to contemporary, to tourists, to people who basically, somehow are eager to learn about slavery or eager to ignore slavery. So that's a bit what we talk about here. However, there was one sentence, one word, 2 words, that sort of got on my nerves, and that's the reason why I decided to sort of rank the book not very highly. It is in the chapter where the author is part of a reenactment of Juneteenth. So that is on June 19, 1865, from a balcony in, I forgot the name of the city, somewhere in Texas. There was a proclamation by a general from the north, just telling the slaves that they were free, and basically had been free for a few years now. And that is Juneteenth. That is what became the celebration, the basis for the celebration of Juneteenth. And the author is part of a reenactment. He's just in the crowd there, being somebody like one of the slaves who learned this, who heard this proclamation. And he said that he could feel history pulsing through his veins. That word, feel, I disagree with it. History is not something you can feel. History is something you look at, it's something that is built, it's not something that can be felt. Because if you can feel history, that means that the Confederate cemetery that he visited, there was an association of people who basically denied that the Civil War had anything to do with slavery, that it was about economic freedom, that it was about a whole bunch of things except slavery. Now, of course, it's very easy to debunk it. It's clear that the Civil War was, in large part, if not only, about slavery. And if feeling history is valid to judge the importance of Juneteenth, then that means that the supporters of the Confederates who deny that the Civil War was about slavery because they feel it would be right too. And that is that's unacceptable. So you cannot feel history. However moving it was to be in a reenactment of Juneteenth, it is not history. So that just for these two words, feeling history, I put it number 4. It really rubs me in the wrong way. I really don't like these two words together. So that's why I put it at number 4. However, I have to say that if somebody asked me of these 6 books, which one should I read? I'm not a big reader of nonfiction. Which one tells the best story? I would say this one. This one is the best story. This one is the easiest to read. It's the most nonfiction friendly. It's the friendliest to readers of fiction. It's easy to read. It's interesting. It's one I would highly recommend. But just for these two words, feeling history, I decided to put it number 4. At number 3, I put Under a White Sky by Elizabeth Kolbert. So in this book, the author visits various places where human intervention has caused basically an environmental catastrophe. And she's visiting these places because humans are trying to reverse their first actions. So basically, it's a place where humans are intervening to try to annul the effects of their first intervention. So it's very paradoxical. I wish this book had an introduction, because this summary that I'm giving you, that this book is about human intervention trying to correct previous human intervention, that's said only at the end, at the conclusion. So I wish it was set at the beginning. But nevertheless, I thought it was super interesting, and I think of all the 6 books that are in the final, it's the one that is the least specifically American. It's not just about the United States, it's about the entire world. So that's another reason why I ranked this book quite highly, because I thought it was a bit more universal than some others. At number 2, I put Facing the Mountain by Daniel James Brown. Now that's the one that if I was to rank the books today, I would put it a bit lower. I enjoyed this book. However, I can see that this is not necessarily the second best book in the bunch. I think it's trying to grasp too widely. At the beginning of the book, I had difficulty figuring out what was the point of the book, what was the story at the center of the book. So it says here, a true story of Japanese-American heroes in World War II. However, before we get to the war, it's almost half the book. And also there's the story of one conscientious objector. Is that the name in English? I think it is. Somebody who, for religious beliefs, he's a Quaker. He decides that not only he will not enlist, he's a Japanese American, and he will not obey the laws that says that he's supposed to be home at 8 o'clock. He will not respect the curfew. He will not voluntarily go to a concentration camp. He will not do any of these things because he's an American and he wants the same rights as other Americans. Because there's that person too, it makes the focus of the book a bit fuzzy. It's not quite clear what the focus is about. I know that in previous rounds, I listened to quite a few rankings videos, and quite a few people said that the part of the book that they liked the least was the part that was military history, because at some point we are going to Europe with this regiment. Is it a regiment or a battalion? I think it's a regiment of Japanese American soldiers. And for me, that was the best part, because in these parts, we knew exactly where we were going. We are going up the hill, we are going down the road, we are trying to take that position. It was clear what we were trying to do, at least in my opinion, and perhaps because it's not necessarily the first book of military history that I read. Not that I read a ton, I just read 2 or 3, but perhaps it's enough for me to get an idea of how military history works and to be able to follow what was going on. So I thought that part was the most interesting of the book, and I liked it a lot. Also, I learned a lot. I didn't know much about Japanese Americans during the Second World War, and there was a lot of research. That is something that I admire in nonfiction books. It's how much research there is. So I tend to value more works of history than memoirs or collection of essays, which require a lot less research. So for all of these reasons, selfish and not necessarily selfish, I decided to put it at number 2. But as I said, I would perhaps put it, I think if I were to vote today, I would put it at number 4. I think I would put it at number 4, and that would bring up by 1 notch How the Word is Passed and Under a White Sky. Yeah, I think. But anyway, I voted for it at number 2. And that leaves for the number 1, Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. I don't think there's any surprise there. Well, no, I don't think there's any surprise there, whether it's me or in general. As of filming this, I don't have the results. However, I am quite sure that it's going to win. It is the overwhelming favorite. I think it should have won the prize from the very first day. I think the only possible contender to beat this would be How the Word is Passed. So perhaps if people are tired of hearing about Empire of Pain, perhaps How the Word is Passed has a chance. However, I don't think it does. I think this one is going to win. As I said, I love a book that is well researched, and this is extremely well researched. The author went through thousands and thousands of pages of court files. He went through everything, well, not everything, but a whole lot of things that was written about the Sackler family. He goes all the way back to the origins of the family. It's 3 brothers who were born in the early 20th century. They grew up basically during the Great Depression. Their father was a grocer. However, he had financial difficulties in the 1930s, and by then it was pretty much Arthur Sackler, the eldest of the 3 brothers, who supported the family. And Arthur Sackler, well, he studied medicine. All 3 brothers became doctors. But where Arthur Sackler was brilliant was at marketing. He was a genius of publicity and marketing and to sell stuff. He could sell anything to anyone. And he basically created various tools to sell pills. He became an advertiser in the medical field. He was basically the only one in there, and Patrick Radden Keefe sort of exposes the methods created by Arthur Sackler. Eventually, the family bought Purdue Pharma, which was a small medical company, and eventually they started to market OxyContin. And before there was OxyContin, there was something else, Oxy something, and then OxyContin. And even though they knew that these medications were highly addictive, they marketed it as though they were basically sugar pills, as though they had no secondary effects, because it was bringing in so much money. And it became clearly about the money, and that's the thing about this book. It is not necessarily about the opioid crisis. It's about how the opioid crisis was made possible and largely remained unchecked because of the methods of the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was also very relevant because it's a topic that we are still hearing about today. The opioid crisis is far from being over, and I'm very glad I read this book. So I put it at number 1. So that's it. That's what I thought of the books. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books. Do you agree with my rankings? What do you think of the books? And do you want to participate in the Booktube Prize? For my part, I will volunteer again for the Booktube Prize next year, the non-fiction division certainly. I'm thinking about volunteering also for the fiction in translation. I'm going to think about it when the call for judges comes up. I'll make a decision then. Meanwhile, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!